Claire's in Wimbledon. Claire, your reaction to this. Good morning.
I think this is absolutely what is going on. I've shown my age now. Is Beadles around? I'm not quite sure.
Well, that was a television show presented by a guy called Jeremy Beadle. It was like a hidden camera show for those who don't know. Yeah.
Right, so this little darling has gone out with a knife, and he's worried. He's upset because he's got feared and intimidated by a policeman because he didn't adhere to what the policeman said.
Yep.
What are you doing with a knife in his pocket? Going to go and butter some toast or something?
Of course he's not.
Why on earth did he have it? And excuse me, the policeman did absolutely nothing wrong. That's good old-fashioned policing. If you don't adhere to what you're told to do, you deserve to be spoken to like that. You deserve to have the fear of God put into you. Listen to him. He thought he was all big with a knife in his hand, and as soon as he got told off or treated like that by the policeman, wasn't he crying? That's exactly what you need. You need to put the fear of God in these kids, and maybe if they realised there were consequences like that for their actions and they were going to be treated like that and had some authority and taken by the police, then half this stuff wouldn't be going on. I think.
Claire, lastly, do you think the panel that's decided this man must lose his job, do you think they're out of touch with what ordinary folk like you and the folk of Dorset and Bournemouth want?
I think they totally are. I have a 16-year-old boy, and he's just heard this on the radio before he goes off to do his GCSEs. And he said to me, Mum, I know for a fact if I go out with a knife or even scissors because he's doing art, I can get caught with those. They know this age. They know what they're doing. As I say, what was he doing with a knife anyway?
Yeah. I agree with you. Claire, good luck with the boy. I hope the exams go well. Thank you for your input. Have a safe day. James in Swansea. James, what do you want to tell me? Good morning.
Hi, good morning, Nick. Great show. Listen, I'm father of 4, 13 years ex-military service, and I'm just going through some police training now, and I've just done my personal safety training. And I got to admit, this is absurd. I can't believe that the man's been sacked. If at best, reflective learning. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Understand that well, at the end of the day, we've just been taught that if there's a threat and you've got reasonable suspicion that that he's got a knife, who knows what else he's got on him. Until he's detained properly, I think you have to do everything within your power reasonably and proportionately to eliminate that threat. And that's what we've just been taught. So I can't see much more other than some reflective learning on possibly communicating with the child when he's proper angst.
Do you think he lost it, the copper?
No, not... Look, it's hard...
I know he's a very brave man. He's far braver than I. But do you think he momentarily lost self-control?
I think he was caught up in the moment. Whether or not he momentarily lost control is hard when you're wrestling someone with potentially more than just a knife on him.
No, I can imagine. Good luck with the training you're going through. Thank you. G says public will get the police they deserve. Good luck. The gentleman you hope was speaking with, I'd like to see him try and police the streets. It wouldn't last. This comes in from John. He's aggressive. Why was he arrested if it was a stop and search? I think his approach was totally over the top. Has the police officer got a history to get sacked? Well, he's got a history for a Heroes Award. He saved a woman from drowning. Phil in Yorkshire, he was a 15-year-old with an adult copper screaming at him and threats of smashing his jaw. I'm shocked and I'm pleased he got sacked. He's a 15-year-old with a knife. Phil, bear that in mind. Stop treating him as a boy. He's decided to take to the streets with a knife. Craig says, everyone knows if a 15-year-old stabs you, it won't hurt. It would only hurt if he's an adult. David says, that child is being beaten up by an adult who happens to be a police officer. That child is carrying a Stanley-like knife. Kate's in Westminster. Kate, what do you want to say? Good morning.
Hi, Nick. Thanks for taking my call. I was a police officer for 17 years.
Right.
I was a firearms officer.
Right.
But I also did a long time work in Brixton. As you can imagine, it was quite busy.
Quite
borough.
Bumpy, bouncy.
Very bumpy.
Yep.
There's been times when I stopped an individual. In fact, it was a youth who was 15 with a loaded Smith & Wesson in Brixton.
Right.
That audio.
So you know what you're talking about. Did he lose it? Do you think the copper there?
100% he lost it. To say to someone, whether it's any member of public, if you don't say so, I'm going to effing smash you.
Yeah.
You don't just get sacked for an isolated incident. They look at everything in the round. So they would have pulled his whole his whole
file. Yeah.
100%, and looked at whether or not the standards, are expected of that as a police officer. So officers, his colleagues, did the right thing. It takes a lot for any officer to put their head above the parapet and speak out against one of their own.
But did he need to lose his job, Kate?
It depends on his file. Had he been warned previously about his conduct and his professionalism when dealing with members of the public? In relation to this particular incident, he actually approached the individual for suspected assault. what happened to innocent until proven guilty? The moment he found the weapon, from the moment you seize that weapon, the threat has been neutralised. The fact that he continued to yell in this kid's face, and then his colleagues actually thought, hang on a minute, the way he dealt with the situation as a whole was completely wrong. Well, that speaks volumes. I think any officer that seeks to justify what they heard on that audio is what's wrong with the Metropolitan Police today.
Why did you leave?
I left because I wanted to pursue my career elsewhere. 17 years in the police.
Yeah, sure.
You become very institutionalised, and I just went on up and do other things with my career. But
what do you do now, lastly, might I ask?
I'm a manager. I investigate. So I work for a private company that investigates crime. So.
Good luck with that, Kate. I have to go. Thank you for your service. 17 years in the job. And I take on board everything you say. I just still feel, and obviously I don't have the man's disciplinary record in front of me, I just still feel desperately sorry for him. Darren says the police officer was totally out of order. Yes, the youth may have had a knife, but it did fall out of his waistband, so he was no longer in charge of the knife. Meanwhile, Paul in Fareham says, how can we help this police officer? We need more like him. When reinstated, I hope he's posted to the part of South London where my son lives. All I can do, I imagine, is I give you his name, and if you put that in, I'm sure you'll see it. There's a GoFundMe appeal has been set up. And the police officer's name is Lorne, Lorne, so that's Lima, Oscar, Romeo, November, Echo, Lorne, and then Castle, as in the things that you defend in medieval times. Terry's in Chichester. Terry, your view. Should he have lost his job? Good morning.
Well, good morning, Nick. All I wanted to say was I can't help but draw a comparison between the way this officer reacted and has lost his job, and I just hope, I'm still traumatised by the news last week with the
this is a 92-year-old man.
With a gentleman, and I just hope that the same consistency is shown to those officers.
Well, what's interesting there, because that was a jury, so that was attempted criminal proceedings where 2 police officers were cleared despite tasering a 92-year-old man in a wheelchair with one leg. So that was this is a sort of, it is an internal employment. That's why the man has lost his job. This is a considerable mismatch, is it not?
I think so, yes. I mean, the 92-year-old couldn't defend himself. I just draw comparisons with my parents. I'm sorry, I'm going back to last week. But the young lad could speak for himself. The 92-year-old couldn't. If my parents had been told they were about to be sprayed, they wouldn't have a clue what spray meant.
No, you're right. And I think you are. A lot of people have been making that comparison on the emails and the text. So, Terry, thanks for getting on the radio. We'll take more calls about that a little bit later. Paul, good morning.
Good morning, Nick. I've had to pull over as a former police officer, on response doing the same job as this officer for a number of years. I do love the shut-off squad. I listen to this daily. We're such a... Honestly, Nick, we're the guy that's just been on talking, you should use go wisely, which is what we used to use as the grounds for explaining, the grounds for the search, the officers from X station, there's my ID. At what point did that individual, think it was appropriate to do that? Oh, I'm sorry, young man. Can you please, that knife's just fallen out of your waistband, but let me just tell you which station I'm based at. I just find it, honestly, Nick, we're asked to do a job. That's why I left after 10 years. We're asked to do a job to protect members of the public. And, OK, listening to the audio, maybe that officer was quite vocal in the way that he was, but he felt that was necessary to deal with someone who was, as you alluded to, was carrying a knife.
Mm-hmm. I need to say he didn't know he had a knife when he first stops him. The knife comes out, in the subsequent tussle.
Yeah,
but I appreciate he's then almost potentially fighting for his life there.
He's reacted in that way, Nick. He's seen a knife. He's reacted in that way. And it's all well and good everybody saying, he should have done this and he should have said that. Have these individuals ever been in this situation where they've dealt with someone? I have. I had somebody wielding a machete at me. Excuse me, sir, could you please place that machete on the ground and we'll go for a coffee? I find this country ridiculous, and it's part of the reason I left the police, Nick.
What are you doing now, sir? What do you do now?
I'm a lorry driver now.
Are
It's
you?
a lot less stress.